Do 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 ka. Do 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 ka. Do 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 ka. Do 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 ka. Yeah.
Back.
Hey, Larissa.
Hey, Lauren. That was amazing.
Just overwhelmed with my talent. I know.
I'm so overwhelmed. I've never seen anything or heard anything that beautiful in my
I know,
life.
right? Hey, you ready to talk about Star Trek?
I really am. I'm so ready.
Hey guys, welcome to Into the Wormhole with Larissa and Lauren. I am Lauren Lowen, and as always, here is my captain.
I'm Larissa Maestro. Hi.
Yay! So that wonderful little jingle that you guys got is because we are starting kind of a new. Is it called a series? What do we call it?
I guess it's a series.
Format?
Like we're gonna do a bunch of episodes about yeah.
A new format.
Sure, it's a series
where we just kind of casually talk about villains in Star Trek. And so we chose Dukat from Deep Space Nine as our first villain to feature. And Larissa, I don't know about you, I'm really excited because I feel like we haven't had a chance just to sit down and have a more maybe organic discussion about something.
Yeah, and especially about like a single character.
Yeah.
So many of our episodes were like, let's choose 2 episodes and try to recap and talk about them both. Or like, let's talk about half of an entire season.
Let's talk about all the doctors.
We tend to be quite ambitious. But this time, we've got a whole character, and we can just talk about this character and how we feel about this character. And it's a good one. I felt like this was a great jumping off point because there's so much material and everyone has feelings about this character. Like this isn't just like a whatever.
Yeah.
you know? This is like, oh, he's around. He does things. He has a lot of problems.
Since this is our first villains episode, kind of wanted to ask you because it was something I was thinking about when we were thinking of like the list for us to go to. For you, I'm curious what makes a Star Trek antagonist a true villain versus just sort of the bad guy of the week or more of an obstacle. Because Star Trek, especially early Star Trek that's more Roddenberry, usually focuses on the obstacles being abstract. We always see, sure, there's like a bad alien or something like that once in a while, but usually it's a diplomatic or it's a misunderstanding or Kirk's trying to explain humanity and humanity's values to some sort of alien entity that doesn't really get it. And then they come to an understanding.
Yeah, or it's just a creature.
Yeah. So I'm curious for you when you were thinking about what makes someone worthy of the villain title in Star Trek, like what does that entail for you?
Yeah, like what's the difference between a Gorn and Khan?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, it's first of all that character leaves a lasting impression, and that usually they're recurring in some way. That this character believes that they are morally right.
Yes.
And they are coming from a place where they believe that they are doing the right thing.
I agree.
And that their goals tend to be sort of in opposition to the goals of the Federation in some way. And that they are willing to sort of go a little bit beyond maybe what the Federation would be able to or would be willing to do. As far as like risking the lives of civilians, as far as damaging the environment that they're in, things like that. That they tend to be more reckless as far as those things are concerned,
Mm-hmm.
and that they are usually delusional in some way.
That's very true.
Like usually they're sort of like living in their own world.
Yes.
Or that their worldview is so different that it makes them seem like they're living in their own world because they can't consider the perspectives of others.
Yeah.
So like the Borg fit into that description perfectly because they check all those boxes. They're like perfection, better than all of you guys. We literally don't care about any of you.
Oh, I was thinking about this because, like, on the villains list, I definitely put the Borg Queen, but
Yeah.
I didn't know if I could put a whole Borg.
Right, like a whole...
Yeah, like, I think we're
Right.
definitely dealing with individual characters with this series.
Yes.
Yeah, because for me, the Borg and what they represent obviously is a huge, adversary, but it's more of the theme of what they represent.
Individual.
Versus an
Yeah.
individual. We kind of have to set parameters somewhere, I'm sure we'll get more into that when we talk about her. But I agree.
We're not going to talk about the Romulans, like we're not like villains, the Romulans. That's also getting into some dangerous territory with labeling an entire species as a villain. And that's generally in Star Trek, that is actually a legit problem with early depictions of Klingons, with early depictions of Romulans, labeling an entire species as a villain.
Yeah, especially again when they were supposed to represent more of an abstraction or a theme, which was the obstacle, not so much an individual, like with Dukat or Kaiwen is another great example, in my opinion. We'll be talking her.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Kaiwen.
Yeah. So, because I was thinking about that too. I agree. I think when it comes, I'm only talking about the TV show because with the exception of the first movie, which had a more kind of traditional Star Trek TOS type, context to it, concept. All the other ones definitely had like a villain, and Khan had a TOS episode, so he's reoccurring.
So we get to count. Khan counts. Khan has to count.
And the movies after Khan, like, there's always a bad guy. So, like, yes, we might end up talking about Shinzon or something, even though he's a one and done. But that's because they're movies, and I think they realized they needed to do something different in the movies. But in this case, when it comes to the TV show, I agree. The reoccurring threat of that character for me is important as far as the villain label. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Also, they're intelligent. That's another characteristic that I think all of these villains have. Yeah,
because they can reason what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what makes them even scarier is the fact that they are intelligent and they can still ration sometimes the evil things they do.
Yeah. There's always a reason. So Dukat, I mean, in particular, I think like right off the bat, one of the things that makes Dukat such a complete villain for me is that he feels so close to just like a normal ass white supremacist colonizer who like really thinks that he is superior and thinks that what he's offering in conquering or colonizing is that he is helping them. He's helping the people that he's colonizing. He's helping the people that he's conquering. And he does not understand why they don't see it that way. Yeah. And that is the thing that drives him pretty much the whole... He's like, I'm here to help you. I don't understand. Like, you made me do it is his whole thing. He's always like, if you hadn't resisted, then thousands and thousands of Bajorans wouldn't died. It's your fault.
Or in his mind, he says there would have been so many more deaths if I wasn't here. And a lot of people know
I helped.
A big influence with the Cardassians and Dukat was that it was inspired by, when the Nazi regime ended, and the creators have come out and said Dukat is a Nazi. Dukat is, some people say he's Space Hitler. Whether you want to say that's a direct parallel or not, but yeah, like he's a
little bit more charming than Hitler. Hitler wasn't known for being like charming. I think he's a little more charming than Hitler, right?
Well, not to get into like a side rant, but when you see recordings of him getting speeches, people who get to power and are able to manipulate people do have a certain sort of charisma to them.
Charisma, yeah.
I would say probably Hitler wasn't as charming as Dukat, but as far as these people who stir up these sort of horrible things in history, there is sort of a presence to them.
Yeah.
I was thinking about, for each villain, like what is really the core kind of mission statement of each of them. And for Dukat, I realized that he is a crazy, insecure attention whore who just wants to be loved. I mean, really, that's his motivation, is this huge desire to be loved / admired. And he'll take that any way he can get, whether it's people submitting to him, whether it's, just women sleeping with him, whether it's through power and oppression or true admiration. Like, we'll definitely talk about how with Sisko and Kira, he definitely wanted their approval. Like, he desperately wanted it. Oh my God.
Those aspects of the storytelling are parts of it that make Dukat's character so interesting. And I think there are a lot of villains that are written this way, where they sort of have an obsession with their adversary. And not only an obsession with them, but like a lot of respect for them somehow, while still feeling superior to them. And that is a really like fucked up place to exist. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it's so fascinating to watch, because there are people, like, again, Dukat's based on Nazis. This is like a legit thing that happened during the Holocaust. Like, Nazi soldiers being like, wow, you're so like nice and sweet and beautiful for a Jew. Like, that's like legit shit that happened. That's legit shit that happened to my ancestors in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. Like, this is stuff that happens, that still happens to Black people all over the world. So like seeing that and like exploring it without like pointing exactly to the issue, which is that Dukat is basically a white supremacist, is like fascinating. And I think it's really interesting how that was worked into the story. Like, I'm kind of totally for it. This is one of the reasons why DS9 is so like, I feel like DS9 is so much deeper in a lot of ways, because these things are written into like the entire story of DS9.
Yeah, and they don't always know what's going to happen from season to season. Like, in the beginning, they didn't know. Dukat's role was made a lot bigger because he became such a popular character, and they were like, let's bring him back.
Yeah. For some reason, I decided to put on Emissary last night. And first of all, the first episode of DS9 is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, the setup is great. Like, Dukat shows up and you're like, oh shit, he's going to be my favorite. He's like, oh, I used to live here. I used to be in charge. You don't mind if I just walk around on the promenade, do you? And I'm like, oh shit, I forgot that was his first appearance on the show.
Yeah.
Where he just shows up to stroll around after they've abandoned the station. Like, his ego immediately is laid bare. He's like, I cannot stand that this is not my station anymore, so I'm going to just set foot on it so I can intimidate people.
He basically is like a dog, and he's like, I'm going to pee on this.
Yes.
In front of you. This is still mine. Keep it warm for me, but...
He's just rubbing his pheromones all over the station.
And first of all, I didn't realize this, but somebody else was cast as Dukat. It was kind of like a Janeway situation where they actually filmed another actor in that role.
I did not know this.
Yeah, and they said, this isn't working. We've miscast. And they were like, get Marc in here. And I wanted to ask you this.
Was it because the other actor's neck wasn't long enough to be a Cardassian?
It is called the neck. Yeah, they said that the other actor, which they actually don't, in the notes I read, they don't say who that actor was. But that he just didn't have the presence needed for Dukat. That was what they actually said, is he lacked that sort of presence. And I wanted to ask you in this episode, how do you say that? I've never heard actually the last name of the actor pronounced. Marc Alaimo?
I think it's Alaimo.
Do we need to double check this? So we're not like just constantly saying his...
I know.
Alaimo. Marc Alaimo.
Okay.
Raise your hand if you want to say Marc Alaimo sometimes.
Yes,
because you read it too fast.
Marc Alaimo.
Marc Alaimo is so good in this role.
Oh, God, he's incredible.
And I think it was just kind of like Eric and Andrew Robinson. It was a symbiotic relationship where the writers gave Marc Alaimo something good to work with, and then he gave them stuff back to work with, and then they just kind of bounced off of each other throughout the whole 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine. But like you said, when Dukat enters the station, he just has that impact. And like just the face and his shoulders, he's got like a very traditional broad-shouldered body, like that triangle build. And it's so funny because looking back, there's a lot of, I would say, older seniors, AARP Cardassians that feel more like they just spend all their day behind a desk, and they're a little, they got a little extra weight, and they're just kind of like, burr, 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 burr. But
you mean like Paul Dooley?
Yeah. That's exactly what I was thinking of, in tweed.
Oh.
But he's one of those, for me, like, he is the ultimate Cardassian.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's also like one of the first Cardassians that we ever see on TNG. He's Gulmasset.
Yes, and they're still figuring out what the Cardassians look like. Like, doesn't he have facial hair, like these little catfish whiskers or something?
It's weird. Yeah, they don't quite have it yet. They haven't quite figured it out. But he is, I mean, like, it's like his bone structure is meant for the design of the Cardassian physique. It's kind of bonkers. Like, I don't know very much about like a casting process and like how you go about like finding somebody for certain things, but like there are certain actors that it's like your body is part of why you were cast for this part. Like Doug Jones on Discovery.
Okay, yeah.
Where it's like the way you look and the way that your body is shaped is part of the reason why you're in this part, and it makes a big difference. And I feel that way about Marc Alaimo because dude's got a fucking neck on him, his face, like his eyes, like holy shit.
His brow is like very arched. Like when you just see him out of makeup, he's been on a ton of stuff, by the way, like mostly TV. But if you look at pictures of him, especially in the 80s and stuff, and he was in like everything from A-Team to Starsky and Hutch, and he's even got like a bit part in Total Recall.
Oh my God.
But his face is just, I mean, you look at him, you're like, that is Dukat. Like his face comes through the makeup because all they had to do was just to follow his bone structure. And it is he has such a strong face and strong angles.
Yes.
Yeah. So his face and his body, it all embodies that sort of like Cardassian quality.
Yeah. He's so lean and he has those wide shoulders, and just like the way that he like stands, it looks like he's looking down at everyone, because he's also very tall. It's like nobody else could have been in this part.
Yeah. I like how the notes just say, get Mark, get Mark.
Just get Mark. Because he'd been, not only had he been a Cardassian before, but he'd been a guest star on a lot of Star Trek stuff before that. So like they knew about him. I mean, it's like, it's almost like being like, why don't we just ask Jeffrey Combs to do it?
Right. Yeah. Get Jeffrey Combs.
Just get somebody who's done it a bunch of times. It's like, ask Cromwell back. He'll do it.
Get a mustache on him.
Yeah. Just glue something to his face. It'll be great. So I wanted to briefly just mention, because I want to talk about Dukat and Kira. I want to mention that there is a moment in What We Left Behind, the DS9 doc, where it seems like Nana Visitor is maybe trying to be diplomatic, but it sounds like she and Marc Alaimo did not get along.
Oh, really?
And I don't know. I haven't done as much more extensive research on like whether they didn't like each other, but there's a moment in the doc where it's like, oh wow, did you hate him?
What can I ask what she says? Do you remember? Can you paraphrase it?
It's something like they ask her something about him, and then she's like, oh no, not that guy. Oh, and then she's like, just kidding. And it's like, no, you weren't kidding. You really weren't. You were like, not kidding. You don't like that guy. It worked for the part, though. It all played out really nicely.
I do think what's interesting is, I guess this is a good time to talk about Dukat and Kira, because I feel like that is such a component of his Deep Space Nine story, is that he's kind of fascinated by Kira, and Dukat always played it that Dukat had this crush on Kira, and sometimes was open to the writers exploring that. And Kira, Nana Visitor, was like, no, Kira would never, ever, ever entertain, getting involved or even friendly with the former leader of the Cardassian occupation.
Yeah.
This just would not happen.
Yeah.
And it's so great. They have such great chemistry.
Again, maybe part of that chemistry is that like she couldn't stand him and it came through. I mean, I also want to say I agree with Nana Visitor. She would not.
Yeah. Which made it was an interesting thing, because Ziel really became an interesting component to play off of Dukat and Kira's relationship. Like when Ziel is in there, I feel like Dukat's trying to play house with her.
Yes.
Because he knows that through Ziel he can get to Kira. And they've, in a very weird way, because of both of their involvement with Ziel and their concern for her, they've made this weird little unit, They're like co-parenting.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I love is that the only time that I feel like we see Kira even slip up a little bit with that sort of fierce, opposition to Dukat is when it's during the Ziel times. I don't think it's son and daughters, but it's around that stretch. And she's on the station. The Federation has had to abandon it, and the Cardassians have taken over, but the Bajorans are still there because, they're not part of the Federation yet. And so Kira's there, and she's hoping she can at least sort of be an insider for the station, for the Federation, and kind of keep an eye on everything at the very least. I don't know if you remember, but when Dukat invites Kira to a party later, because Yale got into art school, I think that's what it is. Yeah. And he sends her a dress. So she gets into her quarters. There's a box. She opens it up. And as you can imagine, Kira's been like a freedom fighter her whole life. She's not really used to having any luxury items, but she pulls out the dress. This is all done without saying words. She slowly smiles at it. She walks over to the mirror and like holds it up to admire it. And then you see her face just go blank and throw it on the ground, because she realizes, what am I doing? What am I doing on the station? But also for a moment, like Dukat kind of got to her.
Yeah.
And I love it, because at that moment, that's when she becomes hell-bent on, no, I remember what my mission is, and I remember how much I hate him and what's going on. And that for me is one of those Dukat-Kira dynamics that is seared in my brain after watching 7 seasons.
Yes, totally. I mean, that I have a lot of feelings about Ziel. I mean, we talked about her in the Tragic Hybrids episode. I consider her to be like the most tragic of all the hybrid characters on Star Trek. And I really wish that her arc had ended in a different way. Like I'm very, like, it's very upsetting to me that she was murdered
by Damar, by
my favorite alcoholic,
brooding alcoholic.
But it makes sense that using a hybrid character to bring these two adversarial characters into the same space, that makes sense to me. It makes sense that they went there, especially because we already knew that Dukat liked to share a bed with a Bajoran woman. And this is also like a very normal thing with colonizers and colonized, because that is also a power move. It's also a control move within that cultural dynamic. And then the character of Zial, like there's that one scene I think it's a different episode. The one scene where Zial's like, please just come to dinner with my dad.
Yes, yes.
Like, please can we just hang out because I love you both. And it's so fucking hard. But also I'm like, Zial, fuck that guy. That guy fucking sucks. Get away from him. Run away. But when they're sitting there together and she's like, look at my art. And she's just like, yay, can we be a family? Those are like the only times I feel like the moment with the dress, and then the moment where like Kira is like, I'm really just here for Zial, and they're both like, wow, we both love Zial. Those moments where they like fluctuate into like almost being friends.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And Kira's trying to be civil. I think what's interesting, like you said, that scene where, you know, she just wants both of them, the three of them to be together. It's more like the guard is down between Kira and Dukat, but that's because Ziel is there. She's the conductor, basically.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
The catalyst for that. And then by the time you get to Dukat giving Kira the dress, you've taken Ziel sort of out, and that's like a direct hit from Dukat.
Yeah. That's not coming through Ziel. Yeah.
And she realizes that, and that's why she, you know, kind of freaks out and is like, what am I doing? Yeah. So it's kind of a nice, like, steps are taken. And you're right. Like, we talked about how Ziel, unfortunately, like, they did so many changes and so many recastings. And
3
how old is she? She's a kid.
Actors.
No, she's not.
Yeah.
That I feel like they kind of, they didn't really let her stand on her own 2 feet.
Yeah.
But as I do admit, like, as far as how she was used between Kira and Dukat, I do think that was interesting.
Yeah.
There's tons of discussions online about, like, how old is Ziel, especially since she's involved with Garrick and what's going on. Like, she's 13 when the ship goes down.
Oh, my God.
And then it's 6 years later, I think. So she's supposed to be 19. And I kind of feel like that's a good age for Dukat to have a daughter, because she can sort of be that, still that innocence, you know, where it's like she really just wants to believe that her father's there for her, and can't we all just get along?
Yeah.
But I feel like by the time they aged her up to that final arc of her, it almost seems like not believable. I still can't tell if she's supposed to be like 22 or 30, you know, to some degree, or younger.
At that point, I'm like, you have PTSD, and I feel like you would have identified that by now. And I feel like you would have come to this conclusion that you don't stand with the Cardassians and the Dominion. Like you would be able to get that by now. You're at this point, you've spent as much of your life with Dukat as you have with Kira. So like you know, like, so you know, like, you've been telling yourself that your father loves you for a long time, but also he like tried to kill you when he first met you.
He was very close to killing you, Ziel. And that's kind of one of the interesting things about Dukat, is when we talk about a character who still shows glimpses of decency or doing the right thing, but then can still go that far. Like, he didn't kill her because Kira and Ziel kind of convinced him not to. But he was going to kill her. Like, that doesn't change the fact that he had resolved in his mind, I have to kill my daughter.
Yeah.
So even though it shows that, like, oh, he didn't kill her, did the right thing, let's not forget what just happened, like, 10 minutes ago.
He was holding a phaser up to her, and he was going to liquefy her, basically. I wish that she had been like, I see what's happening now, and I can't do this anymore, and I love you, but I'm out. And then he's like, but come with me, you're my daughter. And she's like, nah, goodbye. And then she's like rising up in the ranks of the Bajoran resistance. Like, I'm like, yes. Yes.
I could even see a version that's sort of like a combination of what really happened in the show and what you're talking about, where she goes after Dukat to kill him. And she literally has like the phaser, and it's, you know, she's like, oh, I can't do it. Like, you're still my dad. And, you know, he sort of is shocked. And that's when Damar actually kills her. And Dukat, you know, is conflicted as well. Like,
yeah. If there was something more than just like, I love you, daddy. You know, like, it just, bleh. It was disappointing. That was disappointing.
I think would have been really interesting. I'm just thinking about this, so maybe it's not as good as an idea as I'm thinking of now. But Walt's, that episode where the ship crashes when Dukat's in the cell and Cisco is injured on the planet and Dukat is sending a distress call, but he's really not. And Dukat is hallucinating.
I fucking forgot about that episode. Oh my God.
It's a really good episode for Dukat and Cisco.
Yeah.
And it's big because it is that episode where Dukat finally declares his hatred for the Bajorans.
Yeah.
And kind of realizes that this whole image he has of like, no, I love the Bajorans and I was just trying to help them, man. But I feel like it would have been really interesting to have Ziel as one of those kind of Greek chorus characters where she's speaking to him.
Yeah, why wasn't she in there?
I think that could have been really interesting. What would he have imagined Ziel saying to him during this sort of mental break? I think there could have been some interesting, use of that.
Yeah, like I mean, again, I'm just gonna say that like Ziel was underutilized in so many ways, and there could have been so much more done with her character that was not explored. So. That's a bummer, but she did like help with the Kira Dukat dynamic in a lot of ways and like help develop that. Man, what a fucking creep! He's such a fucking creep. I just want to so like one of my favorite. I know we're gonna talk about like some of our favorite Dukat episodes later, but one of my favorite episodes is Covenant, and
yeah, I just watched that.
It's the episode where like. Dukat has created the Pah-wraith cult with all of these Bajoran followers, and they're living on Empok Nor. And he kidnaps Kira, and he's like, "Look at all these Bajorans that love me. Do you want to join us?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "But look, they really do love me." And she's like, "You brainwashed them." And he's just like so desperate. He just like,
I know.
He's just like, please, 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 please. He tries to get them all to drink poison Kool-Aid. And then it all backfires on him. Like he tells them that like he did one of the women has a half Cardassian baby, and he's like, look, the Pah-wraiths are showing us unity. And it's like, what?
That is the best thing about that storyline that I love is that, yes, one of his followers has a baby. And it's very obvious that Dukat is the father, which he's
literally the only Cardassian on the station. Like, he is the father.
And on a whim, he's just like, hey, the Pah-wraiths have sent us a sign of the union of our covenant. And all the followers are kind of looking at each other and then like slowly clapping and going, oh, yes. But you can tell the husband is sort of like, wait a minute.
What? And Kira's like, what?
Guys, yeah. It is a good episode. It seems so appropriate for Dukat. Like, of course, because again, like you said, it's sort of his need for approval or love. In this case, from these Bajoran Pah-wraith followers, it ties into his need for Kira. So he's like, look how many Instagram followers I have. Like, see, do you like me now? Am I worthy of you? Huh? And then the thing with the female, the Bajoran woman, where it's like his lust and his need again for love or control or power over another, again, gets the best of him, and he ends up sleeping with one of his followers and having a baby. So it's just like all of these
or raping one of it. Let's be real, probably raping one of his followers. Yeah.
And then he tries to kill her in the airlock.
Yeah. Then he tries to fucking push her out of fucking airlock.
She's just collateral damage in the end. Should we talk about Dukat and the Pah-wraiths? Because, we talked about kind of Dukat, and then he goes to Ziel, and he goes a little bonkers, and then that's when he gets involved with the Pah-wraiths. And I'm curious to know what you think of later Dukat, where he is the cult leader, he is with the Pah-wraiths, and that whole storyline. Like, do you like where they went with Dukat in the end?
I mean, it makes sense to me that like basically he would become a grifter. And Because he's been cast out of his society, basically. He's been cast out of Cardassian society because of what happened when the Cardassians had to leave the station and Zial was killed and all that stuff. Like he stayed behind and he was like basically dishonored by his culture. So he needed something else because like we've been saying, he has this need for control, this need for power, this need to be worshipped and loved.
And this need for validation. I think that's what it really is.
Yes. So he's like always trying to find some way to get those things. That's his main motivation in the show. So it makes sense that something like this would be appealing to him, you know? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I have problems with just the power wraiths in general.
Okay.
I mean, I just like, it's the whole space magic thing. You know how I feel about space magic. And in a lot of ways, the prophets and the power wraiths feel like a space magic battle of good and evil thing. It feels very Star Wars.
Even though they're established as aliens?
Yeah, because I'm like, well, where'd the fucking power wraiths come from? Like that was added later. Like the prophets were a thing. I like the whole like we don't experience time in a linear way, but now there are other prophets that are evil. Like where did they come from and where do they live and what is this? What is this? I remember being like, how come?
I'm guessing it was just the same alien creatures except
they're red.
And they were yes, it's very important to remember. Yeah, and then that there was a war between the two, and then they were able to them. With their technology or abilities like sort of encompass them somewhere else, keep them in space jail.
Yeah.
In the fire caves.
It always just read as space magic to me. You know, it just always And then the whole problems with the whole like Sisko being part prophet emissary thing that was like fucking space magic.
I think it was more of a Star Trek look about how religion comes into play with the Bajorans. You know, that and it led to some interesting episodes, especially with like Kira, like how she balances her sort of modern view, but with faith. You know, it's like I felt like they were going a direction. It's not very Rodden-esque, I would say.
Yeah,
Roddenberry would deal with that in a completely different way.
Yeah. So I do understand all those things. I do acknowledge that like the exploration of religion in DS9 and how that relates to the prophets and the power wraiths is very interesting to me, and I do appreciate all of those things. I just think like in general, this is like a taste thing for me. Like I am like if it's sci-fi, I want it to be sci-fi, and I don't want it to be like fantasy-ish, because there are parts of this that feel fantasy, like things being meant to be, and you know, that kind of like destiny stuff, like the whole like Sisko destiny thing.
Yeah,
and I'm just like, no.
I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about that because it does involve Dukat's death. And
so
we kind of have
Dukat's death.
Yeah, because I remember it's been a while since I've watched that episode, but I've watched it in the last 6 months. Mm-hmm. But I remember being like kind of disappointed watching it back.
Yeah,
like when you aren't swept up in like the final wrap up of the story.
Yeah, if you haven't watched the whole last season and you just
if you're like, wait a minute, so Sisko's destiny is he's just gonna push Dukat.
Yeah, so they're just gonna fall off a cliff into some fire, and
it turns white, and they're just like, good job, you did it. That's your destiny. And I, again, going back to Larissa and Lauren rewrite Star Trek. I kind of thought there was you're saying how it's all like destiny and stuff like that. And we find out that like Sisko's, spoiler, but Sisko's mom really was one of these wormhole
aliens.
I thought it was going to be something where, because he was technically kind of half alien, even though he takes the spirit, the alien just sort of like takes Sarah, right? That's his mom.
His mom.
Sarah is kind of embodied by her. Like she's really a human.
Yeah.
But I thought there was going to be something about, because he was genetically part space alien, there was going to be something that he could do that nobody else could do. Like when Kaiwen is reading the basically the Pa Wraith, book, and it blinds Dukat because she's like, only I can look at it. I thought there was going to, it would have been interesting if there was just a moment where they were like, we can't read these 3 pages. Nobody, our Bajoran scholars don't know what language this is or what these symbols mean. And then it turns out when they're in the fire pits, Sisko, because he is part wormhole alien, just instinctively knows.
Yeah. So you were hoping that there was going to be some science.
Yeah,
some scientific,
again, kind of that nice combination of there is a scientific explanation, even though you could have a more religious or magical interpretation.
That is exactly my problem with this. That is 100% my problem, because there is zero science fiction part.
You wanted more of that.
Thing.
This is what's happening, even though it could be seen as something else.
Yeah, like what does it mean that he's half prophet? So does that mean that he could experience time in a non-linear way? Because that could be cool for him to be able to
that would be amazing if he could go back in time.
Like, what if he could experience his own life in a non-linear way like the prophets do? They just don't give him anything. They're like, you're just connected to us somehow, and now you're going to live in the wormhole forever. You're
going to push Dukat.
You're going to push Dukat into some fire, and then you're just going to live in the wormhole. Your corporeal body is going to burn up, and you're going to still... what is... It's all just I don't... there's no this is what is
satisfying.
Happening. It's unsatisfying. It's very unsatisfying. Yeah. We don't know anything about, we don't really learn anything new about the prophets. We never really learn what the fuck they are.
Yeah, and it doesn't even mean we have to have all the answers.
Right.
But I think one of the problems is there's never a crescendo.
Yeah.
To some degree, it kind of plateaus.
Yeah.
And it's it would have been nice just to get, just to have a little bit more of a crescendo at the end, like what you said, when the final Dukat Sisko thing, which they've been freaking building up for 7 years. So, Dukat just gets pushed.
He just gets pushed and he falls and he screams and it's what? And the fire does not look good. It's all just
we got to give it a break,
Yeah. Also, I mean, we'll talk about this in her episode, but Wynn's death is also really? That's okay.
Dukat kills her, right?
Yeah, she just burns up.
Doesn't he just
Yeah.
He just
vaporizes her, and it's oh, okay. There she goes.
I think even though in a way Sisko had to be the one to kill Dukat, part of me thinks it would have been interesting. Another way you could have gone is remember the Lion King when it's the hyenas that technically Simba defeats Scar. But it's really the hyenas who turn on him and do the dirty work. Yeah. It would have been interesting if Sisko had done something to defeat Dukat, but then the Pa Wraith kind of, they take him over haha. It just seems like there'd be something so poetic because obviously if you align yourself with the Pa Wraith, it's going to be dangerous. You mentioned Kaiwen. I feel like if there's another relationship we need to talk about a little bit, it's Dukat and Kaiwen, because that does become such a thing towards the end of the show. And in a way, I feel like Kaiwen is a perfect match for Dukat because Kaiwen has this delusion that she is doing this she's basically Bajoran Pope, right? Is that what we agreed?
Yes. I mean, and has the hats to prove it.
and so she, for her sort of delusion is that she's doing all this because she has faith and she wants to be the leader, the religious leader of Bajor and do good for all her fellow Bajorans. But really, when it comes down to it, she's power hungry. She wants approval. She's bitter that she's never had a experience with the worm aliens. She's never had a vision or an orb experience. And she kind of, through Dukat's sort of manipulation, she doesn't know he's Dukat. Dukat gets turned into a Bajoran with plastic surgery, of course. Or does he? Because I think he quickly goes from Bajoran back to Cardassian in a matter of two scenes.
Yeah, we don't really. That's not explained either. It's oh wait, you're in the fire cave.
I think he sees a doctor, and then the Pa Wraith probably turn him back to his normal form later, if I remember.
I think the power wraiths turn him back Cardassians somehow because they're magic, because it's space magic. So, again,
space magic. So, but like Dukat is able to get Kaiwen to the same point where she realizes that she's really doing all this for power and for her own sort of selfish needs. So in a way, they're a wonderful pair.
It's so funny. At that point, I remember like in my last watch through, when I got to that point, I was like, good for you, girl. Just realizing like what you're actually about. Like, you're being honest with yourself right now.
Live your
appreciate
truth.
Yeah, you're speaking your truth. I appreciate that. You are still a heinous bitch. But
oh God.
Yeah, but congratulations for like coming to that place where you understand that your main focus is that you are power hungry and a horrible person. Good for you. That whole relationship, I have to say, yes, I am totally on board with that whole thing. It was hilarious. It was just so fucking great to see Kaiwen get fucked. Like, literally.
I was going to say, well, in context of the show, that could mean different things.
I know. But like, to watch her like have one pulled over on her.
Yeah.
And
to get her comeuppance. Or...
Yes. And that vindication was really
satisfying.
It was really satisfying.
Yeah, Kaiwen wins the award for, I think, the villain that I most want to punch in the face.
Louise Fletcher. She is
Nurse Ratched.
Amazing. Nurse Ratched.
She's the original Nurse Ratched from, Cuckoo Nest, and she's just so good too. Oh, her delivery. Just want to punch her in the face. She's so good.
She's so fucking good. She's so fucking good. And like seeing her and Marc Alaimo to get like their chemistry is also incredible.
Yeah.
That isn't one of the reasons why it's so satisfying in the last season to see him grift her and then for her to find out that it's him, because we've seen these two, they're both villains on the show, but we've seen these two villains hate each other for 6 whole seasons. Like, they fucking hate each other. And then watching that happen is like, oh my God.
You pretty much just see that image of Nelson from The Simpsons just going, ha ha. Yeah.
Yes. That's like literally like for fucking real. It's amazing. That's amazing. It's also really fun to see Marc Alaimo's face.
I was going to ask, what do you think of him as a Bajoran?
I mean, I think he just looks like a Bajoran with a long neck.
He must have been so relieved during those episodes. He's like, I don't have to show up at 2 a.m. for all this makeup. I just get the little wrinkle nose and I'm set. Here's my earring.
Fucking imagine like how, like what it would be like to be like not only Marc Alaimo having to glue, like get all that glued on your, but like fucking God. Armin Shimmerman, like every fucking day. He's in almost every single episode getting that shit glued to your face. My God. Oh God. Anyway, okay.
Well, I think the only thing that distracts me from those later episodes is that my reaction was like, "Whoa, he's a lot older looking than I feel like he's supposed to be."
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny.
Which no offense to Marc Alaimo, he's a good-looking guy, but I just felt like from a story perspective, it was a little shocking where I was like, he looks like he's definitely, and by that time it's like what, season 7?
Yeah, he's in his 50s.
He was like, I think late 50s by then.
Yeah.
If I did the math correctly. And so it was just funny because in that way, and I don't think they ever obviously knew that's where they were going to be at season 7. They didn't know that.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing that seems like one of those just like behind the scene TV things that I found a little distracting.
Yeah.
Was just like, well, the jig is up.
I didn't know you were that old. That's so funny. I didn't think about that at all. I was just like, there's his face.
And I feel like his age, and I think part of that too is just because his age comes up so much, because once again with the makeup it's really hard to tell, and people have had the same complaints about Garrick, especially like when he started dating Ziel, of like, well, wait a minute, so how old is Dukat? But Garrick's dating his daughter, so is Dukat older than we thought he was?
How does this work?
What?
Yeah.
And then he's also with Kira's mom?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
There's that. Yeah. Blech. Blech. That's how I feel about that. Blech.
That's all we're gonna say about him getting with Kira's mom. This is the
ugh. I mean, it's part of the whole, like, he just really likes to fuck Bajoran women.
Yeah, I feel like
power move, and maybe he really did care about her in the way that he could, while also condescending to her and asserting power over her.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not really love. Spoiler alert, that's not really love. But then wanting to continue, like, then the idea of wanting to continue that power and assertion through generations is like,
and again,
like,
it kind
so
of
disgusting.
Brought up some questions about the timeline here.
Yeah, like, is he 200 years old?
Yeah. And for me, I like the idea of Dukat having whatever kind of as real of a relationship he can have. I kind of like the idea of him having a Bajoran woman that maybe he actually had for him as close as a relationship as he was capable of.
Mm-hmm.
But when he has it, because it seems like he's also legitimately fond of Kira's mom.
Yeah.
You know, and they were together for like 7 years, I think.
Yeah. I mean, she also had Stockholm syndrome, and yeah.
Yeah, and then there's Ziel's mom, who, like, when he finds her, when they explore the wreckage of the ship that she was on, she died, and Kira says, "Oh, I know a Bajoran pledge bracelet when I see it. Like, who was she?" And you know, he's very honest about when he says, "Yeah, I had a daughter with her." But I feel like you can't have both. Like, I feel like pick one. Either it was Kira's mom, which I would say drop that one, and just have, like, Ziel's mother be, like, sure, he sleeps with a bunch of Bajorans, but if you're going to have one that he actually was emotionally connected with, just keep it one. Because
like,
otherwise
it confuses the story.
They take the emotional impact out of each relationship.
It kind of does. I mean, I think it definitely, like, rings true in a lot of ways that, like, you can be fond of someone and still not really think they're a person. You know, like, there's that sort of aspect that is very real, you know,
like almost like a pet.
Yeah. That's some shit that's real. Especially if we're, again, thinking of Dukat like a Nazi. So, like, he believes that he is superior. So, like, there's no way that he actually, like, has a real loving relationship with these women. And in that sense, I can see him having more than one of those, because he doesn't ever, because in order to be in a loving relationship with someone, you have to be vulnerable with them. And he has not ever put himself in that place. He's not
I
willing.
can never see him, truly letting his guard down.
He is not willing to be vulnerable with anybody. So his thing with these women is about control and power, and it's about them worshiping him and doing whatever he wants, and it's not about anything else.
I had 2 quotes that I grabbed that I felt like were really great quotes that were said by other fictional characters, but I feel like
they
were great for Dukat.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. And what you just said about his relationship with women reminded me of one, which is from The Labyrinth, which is said by David Bowie's Jareth. And that one is, "I ask for so little, just let me rule you, and you can have everything that you want. Just fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave."
Yeah.
I felt like that is such a Dukat way of putting it.
Yeah.
The other one.
That's some fucking gaslighting bullshit.
The other one is Michael Scott from The Office, who says, "Would I rather be feared or loved? Easy, both. I want people to be afraid of how much they love me." And that also felt like a very Dukat.
Oh my God. That is kind of incredibly perfect. That's amazing. I love that. Oh God. Yep, dude. This character is a very interesting character, and a very and I think if you like really dive in, like very like topical for
God, yes.
for today, you know, like it's like the whole the veiled racism, you know, like he never, until that one moment in that one episode where he's having a psychotic break, is the only moment that you hear him actually say that he hates Bajorans. Up until that moment, it's all condescension, right, and control. And it reminds me of something that happened very recently, which is that the day before he was out of office, Mike Pompeo tweeted something about multiculturalism being un-American.
Oh, I read a headline about it, but I was like, I don't think I want to touch that today. I don't want to know what he said.
And I was like, do you even know how racist that sounds? Like you don't
even know America's history?
Right. Have you been to America? Like what? Like you're Italian American. What the fuck are you talking about? But it feels like a Dukat thing, you know, to say something that is not saying not using the words, you know?
Yeah.
Putting the emphasis there. Anyway,
I always felt like, because you know, he's charming, but not in the same way Garrick is, and a lot of times I wonder, for me, I really like the character, like the writing behind Dukat and Garrick, and I think they're played really well by their actors. And I was thinking, he's charming, but he's not charming like Garrick. Mm-hmm. He has this presence and this charisma, but I always feel like you can see through Dukat, and that was the wonderful thing about Garrick, is that you can kind of read behind the lines, but Garrick almost like sets back and thinks, unless you think you're in control.
Yes.
And stuff. And with Dukat, it's all about him being in the forefront. And like you said, whether he's sort of posturing to Sisko or, you know, he just wants to be Sisko's best friend.
I know. He needs to be the center of attention, and Garrick does not.
He does. Yes. Garrick knows not to be the center of attention.
Yeah, because he's a fucking spy.
Because he's a simple tailor.
He's just a simple tailor.
Well, I have one more. Well, I guess two more. One more thought about Dukat, about just his importance in the show. Again, forget the movies, because the movies had to be their own thing with villains. But as far as the TV show goes, I feel like when you think of those reoccurring villains, the villains who came back, maybe our first one is Lore in TNG. Mm-hmm. But Lore is an android, and you could say that it's a fault of his programming. You know, he's never a human or a humanoid who truly has like a conscience or any of these, you know, things. And
Dukat, this is Noonien Soong's fault. It's not Laura's fault.
Right. Yeah. And when we get to Dukat, it's really interesting, because not only did Deep Space Nine start to explore a longer story arc throughout the whole 7 seasons, but it meant that we had the ability to really develop villains like him, like Kaiwen, like the, you know, female changeling and stuff like that. Yeah. So for me, Dukat is, I think, the most beloved villain of Deep Space Nine, and I think he's an important kind of milestone in Star Trek history for that reason. The fact that he was the first one who again could have a conscience, or could, like we were saying, the thing about him is that he can rationalize his inherent evil self. And he was just a delicious villain to watch. Basically.
And because he's given so much screen time, and he's really integrated into these story arcs, and because there are story arcs, he has more depth than like the Duras sisters, right? Like he has he's not just like, he has a very obvious motivation, but that motivation is nuanced, and it's not just like always trying to get the throne, like that's like all the time, just like always trying to get the throne. And Dukat it's his motivation takes him in a lot of different places, and it's not just about it's not just about achieving one goal. It's about a sustained need for acceptance and for people to love and worship him. And and not like
whether
I want this one thing.
Whether it's being Sisko's best friend, or whether it's being a cult leader, or we see different shades of manifestations of that goal, and it's quite a ride. Do you have any favorite episodes or episodes that you just recommend? It's really hard to pick one.
It's really hard to pick because they're all so fucking good. I mentioned Covenant, which is season 7, episode 9. That is the one where he is the Pa-Wraith cult leader. There's also the episode Indiscretion, which is which is Zial's first episode. That's season 4, episode 5, and that's where they find Zial. And also there's an excellent scene where he sits on something sharp, and it's stuck in his butt, and Kira like loses it and is just like cackling laughing because he has some sharp spine stuck in his butt, and that's hilarious to me. I will recommend that episode, really, even just for that one scene.
Really? See, I thought that scene was too goofy and should have been taken out.
I fucking
that's
love
another conversation.
That's
what I love about our show.
Yeah, I know that you hated it. I'm like, yeah, I love the goofy scene. And then my other pick is the episode Civil Defense.
That was my pick.
Yeah, it was. Oh God, it's so fucking good. I love seeing Dukat thwarted and embarrassed. That is.
Yes. I'm also going to throw in like Waltz is a great one. Like there's.
Oh wait, did you want to say what Civil Defense is? Though,
first? I was just going to honorable mention.
Oh
Waltz,
yeah, okay.
Which is kind of the one we're talking about where Dukat and Sisko are on the planet, and so those are kind of later. If you want just like a fun one where we get early Dukat and it's not as complicated with the storyline, I like Civil Defense because it has shades of Disasters from TNG, where it's just the station. Shit happens on the station and people are on lockdown and separated, and basically it's like the station's old Cardassian security lockdown program is activated as if the station thinks that the Bajoran workers are uprising, and so
attention Bajoran workers.
Yes, so they're all like in their own little vignettes of story, and so Dukat kind of realizes what's happening and beams down to sort of just make fun of the Deep Space Nine crew. And since he's a Cardassian, the ship doesn't recognize him as a threat.
Yeah.
But he doesn't realize that his superior put in a security measure to make sure that Dukat couldn't try to leave. So he gets stuck with them. And it's basically this sort of kooky episode where he is having to work with the Deep Space Nine crew and Garrick. Garrick is in there. Okay. And they're trying to just get everything back to being okay before, I think there's like gas going to be released or something.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so fucking funny. It is. That episode is highly entertaining.
There's a lot of great Dukat episodes and moments. So it really is hard to pick one. I just was wrapping up the Maquis. It's a 2-parter. And so that one has a lot of Dukat and Sisko having to work together for a mutual threat, kind of.
Yeah.
And so like there's just there's a lot of good moments with him.
Yeah, there are. I applaud Ira Stephen Bear and the writers on DS9 for wanting to take a character like this to this kind of level in Star Trek, because like we always say, like, the best of Star Trek holds a mirror up to ourselves. And I think that Dukat really does that. And that is really what any good villain in any sort of fiction should be doing, is holding a mirror up to the darkest parts of humanity and saying, look at that. That's real, and that's bad, and that's something we should be fighting against, you know?
Yeah.
And that those things are complicated. Yeah, nice job, y'all, because Dukat's fucking entertaining and also like makes you think about some shit.
I'm just gonna clap.
Yay!
That's the only thing that seems appropriate.
Yes, congratulations. Dukat is a great character. Congratulations on your neck, Marc Alaimo. Sorry that we talk about your neck so much.
He has an insurance policy on the neck. That's his nickname, is
the neck. Because it's fucking long, you guys. Like, it's so long. Find us in the collective at intothewormhole.show, on Instagram at intothewormhole.podcast. Into the Wormhole is brought to you by We Own This Town. I'm like, he's no Damar. Like, I'm a Damar girl, you guys.
Oh, you like Casey Biggs.
I like a brooding alcoholic. Holic. 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 Holic.